Welcome to my channel. I'm having an affair, she said. To be honest, at first, this brief admission didn't fully register with me. I heard her clearly, but my mind seemed either unwilling or unable to fully grasp the words. She continued to gaze at me while I placed another bite of the delicious marinated pork in my mouth. Did you hear what I said? She asked again. I nodded, my thoughts consumed by the incredible flavor as I slowly began to decipher what she had just told me. She repeated it once more. I said, I'm having an affair. I heard you, Arya. I finally replied after swallowing. She cut another piece of her dinner, skewered it with her fork, and ate it, all while waiting for my reaction. By the way, the pork is amazing, I muttered. Is that all you have to say? I'm telling you I'm having an affair, and you're commenting on dinner, she exclaimed. Arya, could you please stop using that awful word? I hissed, my teeth clenched as the reality of the situation started to hit me. Questions began to race through my mind: who, when, where, and of course why. Trying to sort them out, I asked, how long? When she answered, she winced slightly, which, at the very least, showed she felt some embarrassment. A couple of months, she admitted hesitantly. A couple of months, I repeated, placing my fork down. I suppose that explains tonight's fantastic meal. So is this it? Our last dinner together? After hearing my words, her confidence seemed to falter, and nervousness crept in. What? Why would you say that? What do you mean by last dinner? She asked, clearly uneasy. Well, let me see if I've got this straight, I said, sliding my unfinished plate to the side and folding my hands on the table in front of me. You've been having an affair for a few months. Tonight, it's just the two of us, you've made a fantastic dinner, and now you've decided to confess. I've been thinking, and I assume what comes next is that you're leaving me. She inhaled deeply before exhaling softly. No, Swin, I'm not leaving you then. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Oh, you must find this all so entertaining, and you just couldn't wait to rub it in my face, right? I replied bitterly. My words clearly upset her, and she hesitated, her voice trembling slightly as she responded. Actually, no, I felt consumed by guilt and couldn't continue lying to you. This whole situation has been eating me alive. I hate it. You hate it, but not enough to stop, I shot back sarcastically. I had to tell you it was destroying me from the inside, she groaned, almost with a look of martyrdom on her face. So who is this guy? The one who seduces other men's wives? I interrupted. You don't know him, he's not from here, she answered quickly. That's not what I asked. Who is he? I snapped, my irritation rising. She frowned, clearly not wanting to answer. We work together. He's a production manager in Tisdale, she said reluctantly, leaning back in her chair and crossing her arms. I'm asking again, who is he? I demanded, barely hiding my frustration. His name is Phil, she finally admitted. But so, it's Phil, the production manager from Tisdale, and you've been seeing each other during your weekly trips there, right? Yes, she confirmed, and it's been going on for 2 months. So, what exactly did you hope to achieve by telling me all this tonight, Arya? I asked. I didn't have any expectations, she murmured quietly, almost whispering. My wife looked frightened, tears beginning to well up in the corners of her eyes. I've heard people say affairs are supposed to be thrilling and fun, she continued, the sneaking around, the lies. It's supposed to make everything exciting, but all it's brought me is sleepless nights and constant anxiety. As she confessed, I noticed a sense of relief washing over her, and a slight blush brought some color back to her cheeks. Let's take another angle, I said, trying to calm myself. What, in your view, was supposed to happen after you confessed? I don't know, she replied, shaking her head. That's not true, I countered. Nobody drops a bomb like this without thinking about the consequences, probably 100 times over. We've had 17 years of what I thought was a happy marriage. You know me well enough to have some expectations. She nodded slowly and sighed heavily, a sound of resignation escaping her lips. Fine, she said. I expected you to explode, to yell at me, to say everything that was on your mind. I expected curses and harsh words. After that, honestly, I didn't think that far ahead. Well, since you didn't have any expectations, let's talk about what you hoped would happen. Were you expecting me to forgive you? Did you think I'd kick you out or leave? What did you hope for? I asked. Forgiveness, she said thoughtfully, as if considering it for the first time. No, not really. Acceptance? No, that's not right either. Maybe understanding is the word. I hoped you would see this as a starting point. A starting point, I growled, slamming my fist on the table. How could this be a starting point? This is the end, not the beginning. You've spent 17 years with me, and you thought I'd say, don't worry, we can work this out. No, I didn't expect that she grimaced slightly. You asked what I hoped for, and I hoped you'd listen and understand what I'm trying to explain. This could be the beginning of something new for us. The anger rising inside me made my stomach twist, and the food I'd eaten felt like it was about to come back up. One last question why I forced out through clenched teeth. She simply shrugged, and that made me furious. Why, Arya, I repeated, my voice rising. I didn't go looking for it, she said softly. It just happened. On trips like that, you can feel lonely. When Phil suggested we grab dinner, I was just happy I wouldn't have to spend another boring evening alone, so loneliness, I asked sarcastically. How sad. And he was nice, right? He gave you compliments, and over time you realized you had so much in common. Yes, she nodded, and we had a lot to talk about. He was attentive, charming, and made me laugh. And you decided to reward him with a fling, I interrupted. No, it wasn't like that, she protested. One evening, he knocked on my hotel door with a bottle of wine, and it just happened. Ah, I see. And that's when the guilt hit you? I asked sarcastically. Those are your words, not mine, she replied. I hated the guilt and the self-loathing afterwards, so the sex was good, I asked bitterly. She nodded. Yes, the sex was amazing, she admitted. Well, at least we've gotten to the root of it, I replied bitterly. I'm sorry, Swin. I just wanted to be honest with you. No, it's fine, I muttered. I asked for it. You know, things haven't been right between us for a while. We've drifted apart and become more like friends than lovers. I know you feel it too, just like I do. Our marriage, no matter how amazing it once was, has lost something. Maybe it's that old spark or the closeness we once had. And instead of talking to me about it, you decided, let me think. I furrowed my brow and snapped my fingers. Oh right, you'd have an affair. Isn't that it? No, it's not like that. I guess I got scared. I know it sounds like a weak excuse, but believe me, I wanted to talk to you, really, I did. I just didn't know how to begin. What I mean is, we don't do anything together anymore. Not really. All we do is work, stick to the routine. Sure, we sometimes go to friends' parties, but you and I don't share anything together. We spend evenings watching TV or on your laptop, and even when we sit beside each other, we never speak. Her words stung, but there was truth in them. She was right. I felt it too. Something was missing. She continued, her voice heavy with sadness. We barely make love anymore. God, she was right. When we do, it's once a week, if that. And it's over in just a few minutes. Just 5 minutes, and then you turn over and fall asleep, snoring away. For you, it's quick and done, and for me, I don't even get a thank you. That was hard to hear, and maybe it was true, but it still hurt. So, with Phil from Tisdale, the sex is better, I asked after a brief pause. She clearly didn't want to answer, but under my gaze, she nodded. Yes, it's good with Phil, but not as good as it used to be between us. Back then, when we made love, nothing could compare to that. But lately, yeah, I guess it's been better with him, and he remembers to say thank you. Arya waited for my response, but when I didn't say anything, she added, there's no intimacy between us anymore, Sel. When we're in bed, you're reading, replying to texts, or checking your emails. We don't cuddle, we don't talk. I don't know when it happened. But we've stopped connecting. I know most couples hit a point like this, but it feels like a dead end for me. A dead end, Sel. And I'm not putting all the blame on you. I'm just as much at fault for where we've ended up. So it was easier for you to start an affair. What does that say about me, Arya? Do you really think I'm so out of touch that instead of working on things, you chose to betray me? I asked, feeling a mixture of hurt and anger. No, it wasn't about that at all. I didn't know how to tell you. How do you tell the person you love that they're no longer making you happy? That they aren't doing anything for you anymore? Am I really that bad of a lover? I shot back, my pride wounded. If she was throwing me away, I wasn't going down without a fight. No, Sel, we were fine until the last few years, but lately, it's almost non-existent. Her eyes filled with pain as she looked at me. We're still young, Sel. You should have needs, desires. I know because I have them too. Her words weighed heavily on me, but I knew I wasn't the only one responsible for the state of our relationship. If you were missing something from me that much, why didn't you say anything? Why suffer in silence? I asked, struggling to get the words out. Because I couldn't. Could you? No, you couldn't either. Our sex life became a joke. Honestly, I even started wondering if you'd found someone else. What I nearly exploded. How could you even suggest that? My God, Arya, don't tell me you did this out of some twisted need for revenge. How could you? I was livid. I've never been with another woman. I know, she sighed. I've come to realize that. But it feels like you don't care anymore, like nothing matters. You don't even think about sex. Arya's words cut deeply. Yes, I knew there were issues, but life was busy. There was work, the house, our daughter, and of course the family. My aging parents always needed something. I didn't know how to begin fixing things. I tried, Sel, God knows I tried. But every time I opened the door to talk, you either fell asleep or changed the subject. Sometimes it's hard to talk to you, even after 17 years together, or maybe because of them. Great, Arya, I replied sarcastically. But don't expect me to just accept this sorry excuse for your betrayal. I'm sorry I didn't meet your high standards as a lover. I hope Phil from Tisdale is more to your liking. I pushed my chair back with a loud scrape, grabbed my jacket, and headed out the door. I'm going for a walk, I muttered as I slipped into my coat and stepped into the chilly night air. The wind bit at my face as I walked through the gate, and I regretted leaving in such a rush, but I needed space. I trudged down the street, my thoughts scattered. I never imagined I'd be in this position. Sure, things hadn't been perfect lately, but doesn't every marriage go through rough times? I shrugged my shoulders, shoving my hands deep into my pockets, and kept walking. Arya and I both worked hard. She traveled often for her job as a quality manager, sometimes staying overnight to visit stores. My own job was growing more demanding, and the pressure was exhausting. For her to drop all of this on me out of nowhere, well, it was beyond comprehension. My mind raced, trying to find an answer. Divorce? God, I hated the thought of that. But what I hated more was the idea of simply forgiving and forgetting her affair. Divorce would mean selling the house, the business, and splitting everything. And then, of course, everyone would know. The gossip would be relentless. What options did I have? None of them were good. As I walked, old sayings ran through my head. Once a cheetah, always a cheetah. A leopard never changes its spots. They rang true. How can you ever trust someone again after they've torn you apart? And damn, it was getting colder. I turned back toward the house, savoring the warmth of home. It's hard to find anything that compares to that feeling. After wandering through the cold evening gloom for a while, Arya had already cleared the table, washed the dishes, and poured me a brandy. I thought you might need this, she said, nodding toward the glass sitting on the coffee table. It's freezing out there, thanks. It's not poisoned, is it? I joked, grinning as I removed my jacket. She laughed softly, warmly. The melodic sound of her laughter still sent a chill through me. I'd always adored that sound. If I wanted to poison you, do you really think I'd have mentioned my affair? She teased with a smirk and a shrug. Arya was sitting on the couch in the living room, her legs tucked beneath her, her slender figure still remarkably beautiful. My wife remained an attractive woman, and I completely understood why men found her so captivating. Arya possessed numerous enchanting qualities: her olive-toned skin and striking green eyes, those mesmerizing emerald eyes that held the secret to her allure. They drew you in, pulling you into a world of temptation. Her body, slim yet with a few voluptuous curves in all the right places, was appealing for a woman of her age. Her face, perfectly sculpted with classic features, was where she truly stood out, captivating anyone with just a glance. She patted the couch beside her, inviting me. Come on, Sel, sit down and talk to me. I sat down, picked up my glass, and for the next few minutes she sipped her red wine while I savored my brandy. All right, Arya? I began. I don't understand why you chose to tear our family apart, but you have. Maybe I'm not the world's best lover, but tonight you've ripped my heart out. For God's sake, I've devoted my life to you. Setting down her glass, she wiped her damp eyes with the back of her hand. I know, Sel, I've never doubted your love, and I still love you more than ever. How can you say that I couldn't hold back any longer? You just told me I was terrible as a lover, and now you're saying this. Yes, it may sound harsh, and no, you're not a terrible lover, Sel. I'm just trying to say we both of us let things fall apart. It's as much my fault, maybe even more. I should have talked to you about it, and I'm sorry. Yeah, that would have been nice. But here we are, I replied, finishing my brandy and placing the empty glass on the table. Tomorrow, during my lunch break, I'm going to find a lawyer, get advice about the separation and divorce. And we'll figure out what comes next. I felt Arya tense beside me, followed by a sharp breath. I glanced at her, wiping away another tear she hadn't intended to shed. So that's your answer, separation, she asked, her voice trembling. What did you expect? I shot back. She gave a vague shrug. which stung with its dismissiveness. Come on, Arya. We've been together 17 years, what did you think would happen? Her eyes narrowed in a way that made me uneasy. Expected? I don't know. I guess I had hoped for something different. Yes, I was hoping for another outcome, but if this is what you want, then that's what we'll do. By the end of her sentence, her voice had turned cold. Arya stood up, took both empty glasses to the kitchen, and poured herself more Beaujolais. Do you want more brandy, she called. No, make it a scotch, a double, I replied. A minute later, she returned and sat beside me again, sipping her wine and twirling the glass thoughtfully. Sel, you asked me what I expected. I was afraid your reaction would be exactly this, but deep down, I hoped for something different. I knew it would hurt you, I just couldn't think of any other way to tell you. Still, I hoped it might lead to an honest conversation and open a door to the future. A better one for both of us. What I frowned, shaking my head, still trying to make sense of her logic. You think we can improve things by you betraying me? How about we put the separation on hold for a bit, she suggested. Seeing my frown, she smiled faintly. Do me this favor, just for a while, she added, taking another nervous sip. Listen, I've learned something about myself, maybe about people in general. It's simple. Sex is exhilarating, and I enjoy it. What a revelation, Arya, I replied, eyeing her skeptically. For me, yes, she continued. I've never felt this kind of hunger before. My sexual desire is stronger now than when I was 20. I was hoping we could use that to make us both happy. I couldn't come up with a clever retort this time, so we sat in silence, staring at each other. I enjoy sex, Sel, she repeated, more firmly. Lucky you, I muttered, annoyed. I know I was wrong, and you have every right to be angry, but think about this. Let's say a bomb went off, and here we are, standing hand in hand in the crater it left behind. There's no one around, nothing left. From this point, anything is possible, literally anything. Shaking my head again, I struggled to grasp what she meant. Are you saying we should just ignore your affair and pretend nothing's changed? No, Sel, that's not what I mean. Yes, I had an affair, and it was wrong, but it opened the door for this conversation. We can change how things have been between us, reignite the intimacy and passion, and start fresh. This could be the beginning of a new chapter for us. You've lost me, Arya? Are you saying I should just accept your betrayal because it somehow reignited your spark? What's next? You'll tell me you learned new tricks in bed, and I might like them. She winced in frustration. That's not what I meant, Sel. I was suggesting we take what's happened and use it as a way to build a better life. I don't want what we've had recently. The truth is, I love you, and I want to be with you, but I miss the old Sel, the passionate, wild man I married. If my mind had been foggy before, now it felt as though I'd become that cartoon character, the one whose legs spin wildly in the air while trying to gain traction on an icy road. So it's all my fault, isn't it? And now you're this modern, enlightened woman who's going to lead me to some kind of sexual nirvana. Huh. This affair opened my eyes. Before I met Phil, I was just going through the motions, doing what I had to, while real life, vibrant life, passed me by. Now I feel more alive, more awake, more passionate than ever. I'm telling you again, I love you, but I see things differently now. I listened to her, still brooding and unable to share in her strange optimism. Maybe if we had talked about this before your affair, been more open and honest, I stressed. I can't promise, but maybe we could have fixed things back then. Once again, we sat in silence, staring at each other. Then, suddenly, something clicked in my brain like gears shifting into place. Oh God, hold on, I gasped. I just thought of something. You got scared that I'd find out about your affair from someone else, didn't you? I shot her an angry look. That's the only reason you decided to confess, isn't it? Damage control. You figured if you told me yourself instead of letting me hear it from someone else, I'd go easier on you. That was your plan, wasn't it? The look of complete denial on her face was almost comical. Sel, that's not true. I'm trying to be honest with you, she protested indignantly. Shaking my head, I muttered maybe. But there's no way to prove it. All you're doing now is trying to cushion the blow and lessen the consequences of your actions. But it's not working for me. She took a deep breath, bit her lower lip thoughtfully, and shrugged again. I don't know what else to say. Sel, oh really? How about starting with, I'm sorry, it was a mistake, and it's over. What do you say if we begin with that? She flinched and leaned back on the couch under the force of my bitter tone. I've already tried to apologize, and yes, it's over, she mumbled, lowering her eyes. Her attitude was really starting to grate on my nerves. Unable to hold back my anger any longer, I snapped, "I've had enough. I'm going to bed." Looking visibly anxious, she raised her eyes to me as I stood up. Should I come with you?" "No. I think you should take the guest room," I replied coldly, preparing to leave. "Sel, this doesn't have to be a war, you know," she said softly to my retreating back. Pausing in the doorway of the living room, I nodded and replied, "Yeah, I know. But right now, war is the only thing that gives me any satisfaction." Then I went to bed alone. The next morning, Arya greeted me as I was getting ready for work. By the time I came downstairs to the kitchen, breakfast was already prepared. She looked fresh and radiant. "Good morning, Sel. How did you sleep?" she asked. "Fine," I replied curtly as I began eating. I had to give her credit this morning. She was making an effort to create a relaxed atmosphere. She chatted continuously over breakfast, trying to start a conversation, but I wasn't ready for it. After a night of restless tossing and turning, I had no desire to talk. The fire of anger still burned inside me, and I feared that if I let it out, it would reignite the war between us. Half an hour later, I left for work, leaving her deep in thought. I knew a couple of lawyers, and I invited one to lunch, explaining that I needed advice on divorce. He arrived with a stack of papers in his briefcase, and we discussed the options. Nowadays, the law didn't care about who was right or wrong, who was at fault. Infidelity. No one cared about that anymore. Regardless of the circumstances, everything would be split evenly between the ex-spouses. There were no hurdles in selling the house, especially since our daughter no longer lived in what had once been our family home, which had long lost its magic. Arya had her own job, income and pension plan. She was an independent, modern woman. In the case of a divorce, our assets and liabilities would be divided 50/50. Afterward, we would decide who was more attached to the house, the furniture, or other personal items. Of course, most of the gifts would stay with Arya. I'd given her many over the years for various occasions and anniversaries. Once the lawyer left, I sat alone in the office, savoring the quiet and peace. In that calm silence, I tried to formulate a plan for my next steps. Yes, I could move out. Filing for separation and untangling our finances would be relatively straightforward. Later, we could sell the house and split the profits between Arya and me. Just like that, so simple. 17 years of hard work and dedication gone. At 46 years old, could I really start over? The idea terrified me. I wasn't the kind of man who hung out in bars, and I'd never been one to frequent nightclubs. All my friends were married and about my age. How would I even begin dating again? The thought didn't fill me with excitement, it filled me with dread. In fact, the longer I thought about it, the more anxious I became. I stayed at work until around 7 p.m. When my phone rang, it was Arya. "Are you coming home, or are you staying somewhere else tonight?" Her voice carried a note of barely concealed disappointment. "I'm at the office, finishing up a few things," I replied. "Should I wait on dinner?" she grumbled, clearly unhappy, though I could hear the subtle plea in her tone. "No, don't wait. I'll grab something on the way home. Should I stay up to talk?" she asked, hopeful. "No, don't worry about it, Arya. Go to bed. Can I come back to our bed?" she ventured. "No, I think it's best if you stay in the guest room for now." Her sharp intake of breath was clear over the phone. "Is that really necessary?" she asked. "Necessary? No. A good idea? Yes, I think so." With that, I ended the call and leaned back in my chair, feeling completely lost. When you watch situations like this from the outside, everything seems so clear, and you think, if it were me, I'd know exactly what to do, but when you're the one making the decisions, it's different. It shatters your familiar, comfortable life. When you've been with someone as long as Arya and I have, your lives become so intertwined, like steel cables tightly bound together. Our families were close, both sets of parents lived nearby, and holidays were always grand, shared family events. Her father and mine were best friends and played golf together regularly. Her brother and I were close too. We even worked together on restoring an old Velocette motorcycle, a shared project we were both passionate about. Everything was connected, woven together by personal and emotional ties, and breaking those bonds would be incredibly difficult. When I finally got home late that night, the house was dark and lifeless. After undressing, I poured myself a glass of scotch and settled into the quiet of the living room. Wrapped in a cozy blanket, I basked in the soothing silence, feeling a strange comfort in the soft, dim light. As I made my way toward the bedroom, the door to the guest room opened. Arya stood there, looking as stunning as ever in a sheer nightgown that left little to the imagination. "Hi, honey," she whispered. I wanted to walk past her, but she stopped me with a touch. "Sel, please. We can at least be civil. Yes, I messed up, and you're angry, I understand that. But surely we can act like adults, not like hurt children." "If being an adult means cheating and lying, I'll stick with my childish behavior," I replied, pulling away from her hand. As I turned to leave, I added, "Good night, Aria, sweet dreams." "Sel," she responded, sadness dripping from her words. The following days were like a broken record, stuck on the same tune. Aria kept trying to reach out, but I kept the door shut. We barely spoke, and the weekend promised no relief. I stayed late at the office, grabbing dinner on the way home each night. It wasn't that I feared a confrontation, I just knew that when it came, it would be a disaster, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that. On Friday, I didn't stay late at work and arrived home at my usual time. Aria seemed surprised to see me. Well, nice to see you home at a decent hour," she smirked. Ignoring her, I headed upstairs to change. When I came back down, she had poured me a glass of whiskey while she sipped wine. "I assume you'll be staying for dinner?" she asked. "Yes, that would be nice." While she started preparing dinner, I took my whiskey and retreated to the home office. It wasn't just mine, we both used it. I'd never meddled in Aria's personal life, I had no reason to. We trusted each other, knew each other's passwords, and kept them in a shared file in the desk drawer. But now, curiosity got the better of me. Using her password, I logged into her email and saw several messages from her friend Phil. Nothing inappropriate, just work-related emails. Frustrated with myself for snooping, I logged out. What she had done to me didn't give me the right to invade her privacy. Just as I sent off a few emails, Aria called from the kitchen. "Dinner's ready." The meal looked delicious, as always, and she had already poured wine to go with the chicken. We ate in near silence, but the tension between us grew with each bite and sip. I noticed she wasn't eating much, just pushing her food around the plate, clearly building up to say something. "Please, can we talk, Sel? This silence is driving me insane," she finally broke in. "Yeah, I suppose it's about time," I replied, looking up from my plate. "I've been trying to give us both some space. I needed time to think about your confession and what it means for me." "I understand," she sighed, her face grim. "So, what conclusions have you reached?" "I met with a lawyer who specializes in divorce," I told her. "We went over the necessary paperwork. I've listed all our assets and I've printed out the business records from the last few years. We need to decide what we're going to do." Aria listened, her expression growing more somber as I spoke. When I finished, she simply stared at me. "I see. So it's divorce then." I accept that she sighed again, as though stating the inevitable. "I don't see any other options." "I'm sorry," I said with a shrug. "There are hundreds of options, Sel. What about a trial separation? Therapy? Do we really have to end it this way?" Downing the rest of my wine, I growled, "We're ending it this way because you left me no choice. Shall we go over your complaints? I'm a lousy lover, nothing compared to your new boyfriend, right? And according to you, our marriage has been falling apart for years. I don't see how any of your suggestions would fix that." "God, Sel, I never once said you were a bad lover," she protested. "I said we stopped putting effort into our relationship, that we've given up on trying to change things. But it's something we can still fix. It's not too late for us." "Did you or did you not say that Phil is a better lover than me?" I demanded. "No, damn it, I didn't say that," she snapped, her eyes flashing with anger. What I said was that what I experienced with Phil was different and exciting for me. I said I enjoyed it more than our recent encounters, but only because you and I have fallen into a rut. But I'm telling you again, we can get out of that rut. "It sounds like a deep rut," I scoffed. "Look, Aria, I don't want to argue anymore, but honestly I don't care. My suggestion is that we end this. There's no point dragging out a dead relationship. You're unhappy in our marriage, and I'm certainly not thrilled with your confessions." Aria looked shocked. "Are you serious? You don't care?" She glared at me angrily. "That's exactly why we're in this mess. You've lost your passion for life. You're stuck in this boring routine: work, home, work again. We never go out, we don't see our friends anymore because you just don't care. It's like nothing matters to you anymore." By the end of her rant, she was nearly shouting. "We're in this mess because you couldn't keep your legs closed," I shouted back. "Don't try to pin all the blame on me, Aria. You could have talked to me, explained how you were feeling. It was your choice, and only yours, to look for excitement elsewhere." "Yes, and I regret it. It was a mistake. I should have had the courage to talk to you instead, she said, her tone softening slightly. Maybe then we would have had a chance. I can't get past your infidelity, I repeated for what felt like the 100th time. I've thought about it a lot these past few days, Arya, and I've made my decision. It's just too complicated. Even if I tried to move on, it would take months, maybe years, to start trusting you again. I told you it's over, she replied wearily. Yes, and when we got married, you promised to be faithful, but you broke that vow. So why should I believe you now? I made a mistake, Sel. One mistake in all our years together. I believe we can fix this if you could just open your mind and imagine what life could be like for us, she pleaded. I still love you, just as much as I ever did. Now that everything's out in the open, we can use this to rebuild our life together, to make it even better than before. You seem to forget that you cheated on me, betrayed my trust, lied to my face, and made me a fool. If you did it once, what's stopping you from doing it again? I countered. My actions were a reaction to your inaction, she argued, shaking her head. If we had brought back the romance, added spontaneity, and worked on being close again, she trailed off, then brightened slightly. Look, I've laid all my cards on the table. What about you? Now we can be completely honest with each other. Don't tell me you've never lied to me before. Of course I've lied. Everyone does sometimes, I said, exasperated. I lied when I said your butt didn't look big in those new jeans, or when I told you I liked your latest haircut. But those are small lies, Arya. I know I'm far from perfect, and yes, I've taken you for granted, but none of that justifies cheating. Her posture sagged, and she let out a deep sigh. So that's it. It's over just because you don't care anymore. Yeah, that's about it. I can't compromise my principles, and I won't lose my self-respect over this, I said coldly. Arya dropped her gaze to her plate, poking at the now cold food. The conversation died, and the kitchen felt suffocating, the air heavy with tension. Self-respect. What does self-respect have to do with any of this? She suddenly shouted, slamming her fork down on the plate. Are you serious? How do you expect me to live with the fact that you slept with someone else? I shot back. No self-respecting man would tolerate that, and I'm no different. She looked stunned, raising a hand to her mouth. My God, you're really not willing to give our marriage a second chance because of your fragile male ego, your silly pride. For heaven's sake, Sel, it happened. It's in the past. What matters now is the future, and it can be anything we choose. Yes, I made a mistake. But we could both learn from this. I was beyond tired of the argument, the endless back and forth. I sat there in silence, boiling with anger, as we hurried through the rest of the miserable dinner. Afterward, I went to the office and grabbed the paperwork, dumping it on the table. I think you should look these over, I said coldly. Arya looked up, the disappointment clear on her face. Fine, was all she said. It was well past 10 p.m. when she joined me in the living room. What are we going to tell the family? She asked after a brief pause. If you want me to be honest, I will. I don't expect you to lie for me, Arya. I'll keep your secret, I replied. We'll tell them we have different visions for the future. I'm not going to ruin your relationship with them. Thank you, she whispered, her voice filled with sadness. That was it. We spent the next few days together, finalizing the paperwork. We decided to sell the house since neither of us was attached to it anymore. On Saturday, we gathered both of our families to break the news. It hit them like a bombshell. Our parents were devastated, urging us to try counseling or therapy, anything to avoid this. Arya stuck to the story about us growing apart over time. Our daughter, Andrea, was heartbroken. She rushed over to help me move into my new place, and despite our serious talk, she still tried to play mediator, unaware of the full story. She just wanted her parents to stay together. My firm stance on the separation, which she didn't understand, created a small rift between us. Andrea quickly told me her mother had fallen into a mild depression, which hurt to hear because I felt the same. It wasn't just Arya's world that had crumbled, mine had too. But as her father, Andrea probably expected me to be strong, to magically fix everything, just like I always had. Now, I came home from the office to an empty house, cooking meals for myself, and my daily routine consisted of nothing but work, watching TV, and of course dealing with a pile of dirty dishes. I have to give my friends credit, they really tried to lift me out of the dark hole I fell into after Arya and I split. They took me out for golf, fishing trips and friendly barbecues, but honestly I didn't enjoy these outings much because I felt like everyone was just pitying me. They'd offer advice, telling me not to give up and encouraging me to move on. It's easy to say those things, But trust me, it's incredibly difficult to actually do. In the end, I still came home each day to an empty house, a cold bed, and unbearable silence. A huge part of my life had been ripped away, leaving behind an ugly void that nothing could fill. Family gatherings were hard for me too, even though we both received the obligatory invitations. Our families chose not to take sides or play favorites. Unlike me, Arya seemed to pull herself out of her hole and move on. As she reconnected with her friends, I could see the changes happening to her. I had to admit, she had never looked better than she did after the divorce. She had a new haircut, clearly started following a workout routine, and her toned body highlighted her best features. She looked absolutely stunning, even more so than before. Despite our separation, Arya was always kind to me, offering warm greetings, hugs, and asking how I was doing, but I kept my pain locked away deep inside. The real gut punch came when she introduced me to her new boyfriend. Though she seemed a bit nervous, Arya was glowing and looked genuinely happy. I watched with envy as they hugged and held hands. That day I went home early. My biggest issue was that I couldn't figure out how to start living again. It felt like I was stuck in some kind of limbo. Some of my friends' wives even tried to set me up with new women, and while I did go on a few dates, there was never any spark. Arya had set the bar too high, and I couldn't help but compare every woman I met to her. None of them came close. I hated that, but over time I resigned myself to the idea that maybe my one shot at love had passed me by. On the upside, I now had plenty of time to focus on work, and as a result, I made significant progress in my career. Long hours at the office, combined with hard work, paid off financially. I bought a new car, and on top of that, a cool motorcycle. My daughter, Andrea, still visited me regularly, though she had her own life and friends. One day, while having lunch at a small cafe downtown, I was shocked to see Arya walk in arm with another man. I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to her previous boyfriend. What was his name again? Oh right, Phil. When she noticed me, Arya came over with her new companion. I stood up, and we exchanged a hug and kissed on the cheek. Mind if we join you, she asked. I gestured for them to sit, and once they were settled, Arya introduced me to her companion. Sel. This is Tim. We shook hands across the table, and Arya started asking about my work, filling me in on Andrea's latest news. Tim seemed a little uncomfortable as she chatted away, and after a moment, he quietly said to her, "I think I'll head upstairs. I'll see you after lunch." He leaned in, gave her a kiss, and added, "Take your time." Once he was gone, I couldn't resist asking, "So, what happened to your previous boyfriend?" At first, she seemed caught off guard, but then she realized who I meant. "Oh, you mean Colin," she said with a casual smile, waving her hand dismissively. "I still see him, but it's nothing serious." "And does Colin know about Tim?" I asked sarcastically. She nodded, smirking. "Yes, they know about each other. Like I said, it's casual. No commitment, so, how are you?" She countered, shifting the subject. "Is there anyone special in your life?" "No, not at the moment," I replied. "Sel, you need to get out more," she said seriously, her tone turning somber. "You can't just stay home and rot away. Andrea told me she's really worried about you." "I'm fine, Arya. I'm happy," I grumbled, though I definitely didn't feel that way. She frowned deeply. "Liar. I know you better than you think. Be honest, have you had any relationships since the divorce?" "I've been on a few dates," I admitted, embarrassed by the fact that my love life had been pretty much non-existent. "But have you been in a relationship?" she pressed. "No," I confessed, feeling ashamed. "But it seems like you're doing just fine," I added, trying to steer the conversation elsewhere. "But yeah, once I got over the breakup and the divorce, life got pretty busy," she said, grinning. "I did a lot of thinking and made a conscious choice not to let the divorce ruin my life then." The words slipped out before I could stop them. "How's Phil doing?" I asked, instantly regretting it. She smirked again and shrugged. "He's fine. Actually, you said it was over between you two." "Are you still seeing him?" I asked, surprised. "No, Sel, it was definitely over then. I broke it off because of us. It's what you wanted. But after the divorce, I started seeing him again. I needed something positive in my life, and Phil, well, he's a nice guy. I had fun with him." Shocked, I asked, "So how many men are you seeing now?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, 3 or 4. "Good Lord," I muttered, stunned by both the revelation and her casual tone. "Don't you have any shame?" She pursed her lips and shrugged. "Why should I be ashamed?" "I told you, I enjoy sex. and I'm honest with all my partners. They all know about each other, 2 of them have even met. We've had a couple of nights together," she added, winking suggestively. I felt the blood drain from my face. "You mean to tell me you've had threesomes?" Arya pouted slightly, a light smile playing on her lips. "Yes, and it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life," she admitted, almost rolling her eyes with euphoria. "Well, good for you," I said bitterly. "I'm sure you'll get everything you want." I forced myself to respond, even though my usual voice failed me this time. God, who was this woman? Had she always been this way, just pretending to be the modest housewife I thought I knew? I couldn't wrap my head around it. As I struggled to gather my thoughts, trying to figure out how to respond to this familiar stranger, she leaned in closer, speaking in a softer tone. "Listen, Sel, if you're interested, we could meet up sometimes. I'd never stop loving you, not a day goes by that I don't think about you. I'd be happy to have you back in my life." I was stunned. "What? Do you seriously think I'd want to be part of your little harem and settle for being a fling whenever you're not busy?" "Sorry, Arya, that's not for me," she made a sad face. "That's too bad. We were good together, and there's still a place for you in my heart." "No thanks, I'd rather keep my self-respect," I replied firmly. She scoffed, that silly male pride again standing up. She leaned over, kissed me quickly on the cheek, and said, "It was nice seeing you again," before walking away, leaving behind the familiar scent of her perfume. About a year and a half later, I received an invitation to her wedding, but I decided that attending and watching my ex-wife's triumph would be more than I could handle. Andrea, of course, filled me in on all the details of the ceremony, and she was disappointed that I refused to go. My daughter had really wanted me to be there, especially since she was a bridesmaid. Even now, I sometimes wonder if I made the right choice in divorcing Arya. After we split, it was like Arya found a new spark in life. Every time I saw her, she seemed brighter, more energetic, and happier than I'd ever seen her before. Her new marriage appeared solid, while I struggled to find the right relationship for myself. Whether it was lingering bitterness or just a lack of trust in other women stemming from Arya's betrayal, I'm not sure. It was at her parents' wedding anniversary party that I finally met Arya's new husband. Surprisingly, he seemed like a decent guy. We ended up at the bar together, and after a few stiff drinks, the atmosphere between us relaxed a bit. "Tell me, Selwyn, why the hell did you divorce Arya, her new husband?" Trevor asked, his eyes locking onto mine. I stared at him, trying to figure out if he was being a smartass or genuinely curious, maybe because Arya hadn't told him the full story. Either way, I decided to be blunt. "We divorced because she cheated on me, had sex with another guy while she was away from home," I said, hoping the information would shock him. Trevor simply furrowed his brow, shook his head, and replied, "Yeah, and what would you have done in my shoes?" He shrugged casually. "I don't know, man, but I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have kicked her out. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad you did, because your loss became my gain. Women like her don't come around often." He took another sip of his whiskey and added, "You asked what I would have done. Well, if I were you, I'd have done whatever it took to keep Arya." "So, you would have just accepted her betrayal and been fine living with it?" I asked, shocked by his response. "Yeah, no problem. It was just sex, right? Hell, none of us are perfect, we all mess up. In the end, it was just sex. Who cares?" When I didn't reply, he smirked. "Buddy, Arya is the sexiest woman I've ever been with. I've had others before her, but damn, she's something else. Arya loves sex, man, you blew it, but hey, I'm happy you did because now she's my wife. Still, I feel a little sorry for you." "And what about everything else?" I shot back. "Sex alone doesn't get you far." "Oh, I know. Arya's incredible in more ways than one. She's a great cook, works hard, and keeps the house running perfectly. What more could you ask for?" He grinned, spreading his hands wide. "Aren't you worried she'll cheat on you like she did on me?" I asked. "Why would I be?" Trevor answered with a laugh. "We're completely honest with each other. Arya told me about her affair when she was married to you and how it tore both your lives apart. When we first got together, she was upfront about seeing other guys too. I think she just had a bit of a midlife crisis, but now we're happier than ever." Later, I watched them dance together. Arya's gorgeous, sensual body was pressed against his as they moved gracefully across the floor. Trevor wasn't wrong about how sexy she was, but I'd always known that. That night, as I left the party, the weight of my decision to end our marriage hit me harder than ever. My ex-wife had moved on, built a new life full of happiness, while I remained stuck, trapped in the quicksand of my own making. Thanks for sticking with me. Until the end of this episode of Cheating Stories, take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.